Hey everybody, Matt Johnston here, and I've been doing a couple of posts on issues of racial discrimination, racist remarks, things like that in the workplace. In the previous video, which is linked up here, I had talked about what to do if an employee is making racist comments using company communications devices, so such as email or company intranet or text messaging systems. So check out that section. In this video, I want to talk about what happens if an employee is making a racist comment about managers online in a review setting or in Facebook or things like that. So this is a tricky situation. It's not the easiest thing to deal with because there are a couple of federal and state laws that permit an employee to make comments about the conditions of their work. So things like their hours, wages, working conditions, workplace safety, things like that. Those are things that are covered specifically under the National Labor Relations Act, Section 7, which allows an employee to make comments about their working conditions. And the categories that I just mentioned, those are very, very broad. So basically, any sort of situation or condition in which an employee is working, they are free to make a comment. Now, where things get a little bit dicier is when those comments involve racism or charges of racism and things of that nature. And we're really talking about two different standards here. The first is the legal standard. An allegation of racism against an employer or discrimination that is carried through the legal process. So an investigation by the EEOC or a state agency, or a lawsuit alleging discrimination under Title VII. Those kinds of things carry with it a very specific legal standard. And one of the things that an employee has to prove is that the racist or the alleged racist behavior of an employer was both subjectively offensive and objectively offensive. So subjectively, the individual employee feels discriminated against, feels wronged and offended. It's usually a pretty easy standard to attain. The harder part is that it is objectively discriminatory, so that a reasonable person on the outside looking in would say, yep, that's pretty bad. And an employee alleging discrimination on the basis of race or national origin would have to have a comparison case. So they would have to be able to demonstrate that they were treated differently than some other person in a similar position. So they would need to have some sort of comparison, and they may or may not have that. If an employer has treated everybody with dignity and respect and treated them the same, then an employee has very little ground to stand on in order to make a legal claim for discrimination. But as we all know, there's a different court out there that doesn't have the same rules, and that is the court of public opinion. So I recently had a client contact me, and they were concerned that a former employee who essentially abandoned their job by just refusing to come to work, that this former employee was going to begin making comments of a racist nature, accusing employers, the employer and its management, of being racist. So the term racist carries with it a very, very damaging connotation these days. It's not simply that a person is racist. Being accused of being racist, whether you are or not, is probably a worse level of defamation than anything else that we once had, including being branded a criminal, being branded a communist, being branded, maybe pedophile is still worse than being branded a racist, but that's pretty much where it is. Being accused of racist is probably one of the worst things to be accused of in modern society. I'm not here to debate the politics or the public perception of that, but that is a fact that we now must deal with. So if a former employee attempts to post an allegation of racism online on a public review site like Yelp or something like that, there is a public relations aspect of this. And now this isn't really legal advice, so I do want to preface this with this. This is about the appearance, the public relations aspect. So the first thing that you want to do is don't delete it and don't ignore it. You can't ignore it. If you make a complaint to the review board like Yelp or Google Reviews or something like that, and they take it down, that's fine. But you shouldn't be going about deleting it. Facebook, as far as I know, Facebook is the only one that allows you to delete reviews on your business page. But you shouldn't be in the practice of deleting it. You should assemble your facts. You should make sure you understand the facts. But be mindful, whatever reply you post onto that site is going to be public record. It's a document. So you want to make sure that you know the facts, you have marshaled the facts, and you have addressed the allegation itself. Don't address the person who made the allegation, address the allegation itself. Number 2, don't wait a long time to address this. The longer you wait, the more it looks like you were ducking it, the more it looks like whatever response you put up there is going to be one that is going to be presumed to have been massaged by public relations experts and has been washed through various levels of review. Address it, know that time is critical, but again, remember, don't just fly off the handle. I'm not saying let it sit for weeks, but I'm also saying you might not want to respond immediately. Allow your anger to subside and address it at that point. Whenever possible, keep it public, okay? Address the allegations there publicly. Now, the last thing that I want to say is that it is okay to be human. One of the things that often comes with these allegations of racism is the fact that it is intended to deeply and personally harm the individuals who are being accused. It is rarely based in truth. I'm not going to say that it's never based in truth, but it is rarely based in truth. Most employers truly do want to be fair and equitable and treat all of their employees the exact same way with the level of dignity and respect that every human being deserves. But when you are accused of being a racist because a disgruntled employee is kind of pissed off at you, for lack of a better term, it's deeply wounding. And it's okay to let your guard down a little bit and say that you are deeply wounded. I do not suggest apologizing. I do not suggest saying you're sorry for anything. I don't even suggest saying you're sorry that the employee feels that way. Any kind of words of apology will be taken as an admission of liability, and you want to avoid being seen as liable for being a racist. You're not. And it is okay to be human and to say, this is deeply offensive. It is not who I am. But I really suggest don't apologizing. An apology probably gets you nowhere in the eyes of the public. If you're dealing with a disgruntled former employee, you can say that this employee, for example, abandoned their job. They didn't take it to management. They didn't discuss this with management. They just abandoned their job. And if it's true that they never discussed these feelings of discrimination or racism with their employer, it's impossible for an employer to respond. If we don't know, we can't respond to it. So when you're dealing with a disgruntled employer, if you're dealing with a customer who is making these allegations, the same sort of things apply that I've talked about. Be responsive, respond in public, make sure you have the facts at hand, make sure you can document those facts. I've dealt with clients and customers where their customer has alleged a racism but failed to acknowledge the fact that what happened was that the customer failed to abide by the policies that the the business had publicly and repeatedly brought to the client's attention. And the client felt that they were being discriminated against when in fact they were being treated the way they were being treated because the customer had failed to follow the policies of the company, policies that were made public, made available, and constantly reiterated. So have the facts at your side, respond publicly when you can, being respectful, and address the substance of the allegation. Okay. I know a lot of people have been watching these videos, and quite a few of the folks that I've talked to recently have really enjoyed them. I would appreciate if you would give us a review. Hit the subscribe button up here, and you can also start to see more content. If you hit the little bell that's down below, it'll also let you know when I have posted new content. In the meantime, have a good rest of your week and enjoy the upcoming summer. Bye-bye.